8th, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, Community Engagement Subcommittee. Okay, let's jump in and get started with introductions from our PCCEP members. We can begin with our co-chair who is presiding over this meeting tonight, Tia. And before we do that, I'll mention our other co-chair, Ashley, is not able to attend this meeting. So Tia will be supported tonight by our full committee PCCEP co-chair, Celeste. So I will hand it over to Tia.
Hello. Oops. Hello, welcome. My name is Tia Palafox, and I've been a PCCEP member since August 2021. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently the co-chair for the Community Engagement Subcommittee. Thank you so much all for being here. And I will pass it to Celeste.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Celeste Carey. I am current co-chair of the PCCEP committee, and I'm here to assist Tia if and as she needs me. Pleasure to be here. Welcome, everyone.
How about Nathan?
Hi, everyone. Nathan Castle, use he, him pronouns. I've been a PCCEP member since the middle of 2022. I'm on this subcommittee as well as the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee. Yeah.
I'm looking through the list. I see Byron, heard his name.
Good evening, everybody. Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member and chair of the Racial Equity Subcommittee. Glad to be here tonight and glad to have everybody here. Am I passing it or you, Tia?
You can, or is Robin here? I'm looking at and Gloria.
Leslie is here.
Leslie, I see Leslie. Leslie, can you go?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Martinez. My pronouns are she, her, and I just joined the piece. Well, I guess I keep saying just joined, but it was in August, and that's like, I was counting, and that's almost 5 months ago. So yeah, so I've been with PCCEP about 5 months, and I'm also a member of the Settlement and Policy Subcommittee. So thank you, everyone, for having us tonight.
Thank you.
I feel the same, Leslie. Time flies. Okay, and now I'll invite anyone from the city, DOJ, PPB, anyone else to jump in and introduce themselves if they would like. I'll start. I am Dory, the PCCEP project manager. Yeah. Anyone else?
Good evening, folks. Mary Claire Buckley, she, her, and I work at the Portland Police Bureau doing DOJ compliance as the Inspector General. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Dory. Hi, everyone. I'm Jared Hager, he, him pronouns with the Department of Justice. Thanks, Dory. It's cold in my room. I appreciate you having me here. I'm just gonna be listening and observing tonight, but I appreciate you having me here. Thanks.
Great. And I think we also have time if any members of the public would like to introduce themselves this evening. And you can also do so in the chat if you would like.
Hi, this is Barb Rainish. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a member of the community, member of the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council, and a PCCEP groupie.
All right. And now we can, oh, sorry, first our community agreements. Any volunteers to read these?
I can read them. Our community agreements are listen actively and respectfully, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, and respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, and be okay with ambiguity. Thank you.
Okay, quick overview of today's meeting. So we're going to start off with a few updates from this subcommittee and ongoing work. And then the rest of this meeting will be devoted to a work session on a community engagement event for gunshot detection. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Tia for the updates portion. Next slide.
The agenda input form is on the website, and we'll put the link up on the chat. And this is for community members to be able to let us know as a committee and subcommittees what they'd like to see us talking about. As far as the PCCEP members, you all can fill out the form, but also feel free, anyone can feel free to email the co-chairs and chairs for agenda requests, as well as the chairs and co-chairs will be sending out emails to the members to request agenda items from our members as well. We wanted to make sure you knew that there's an agenda input form, as well as the advanced public comment form is on the website. So just those are a couple of updates if you'd like to scan over the website and check out the forms. Thank you.
Any questions about this? And Tia, I'll let you continue on.
Oh, okay. Did we want to talk about the organization list? Or
yeah, I believe that's next.
Okay.
This is just, I mean, it's all right here. So we're just keeping everyone updated. That Nathan will be representing PCCEP on the upcoming RFP scoring panel for the gunshot detection systems RFP. That's about all there is to that. Okay, and yeah, Tia, so this is the next slide here, I think.
Okay. The next updates are our subcommittee that we're in tonight will be putting together a team of people who would like to help draft a letter to take to the full board committee on introducing the new subcommittees with PCCEP and how we are now under the community safety division, letting organizations in the community know that we are up and running, that community engagement is new and still working within the mental health population and youth, and racial equity is still going strong. And so we'd like to get a group of people to help us put a letter together to get out to all the organizations that we can. And we're still working on that long organizational list. And we'd like to get a group of people to help really put that organization list together. I have a few people from the first meeting who has already said that they'd like to help. And so I have those down, but tonight during the work sessions, I hope that we can put together some teams to work on both the new community letter to introduce ourselves and get the organizational list compiled and ready to get working on with letters going out and engagement happening. But then the question here is, do we have volunteers to work on either of these tasks? So should I just go ahead and move forward on and not do that during a work session? Sorry, on the updates.
I think since we're still on this item, we can take a beat and see if, yeah, take a beat for that question.
Okay. With the PowerPoint on, I can't see anyone anymore. So that's why I'm not, okay, thank you. Not feeling like I'm engaging with people. Thank you. So yeah, it's Byron. Are you Leslie? But you
yeah.
have to be part of that.
I'd like to work on the list of organizations or like helping craft that. I've been working on the bylaws for the drafting, so I think I'd like to take on a different project.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. And I know Gloria wanted to do that as well. And Byron.
I don't know if this question has been asked. Can we use social media, Instagram, Facebook? I know Facebook, but can we have a page on Instagram?
Yes, we did talk about that at our last meeting, and that is something that the staff is getting cleaned up, and maybe I'll let Dory answer that.
And are we, do we have something that we can send out electronically to, oh man, to these organizations? You know, like I know we have a link for a website, but if we send it to their email and they miss it, how do we know if they got it or not, in a sense? So I don't know.
We are working on a letter that will be physically mailed and a flyer/poster that can be put up in organizations. But emailing the information is something we definitely want to do with it and have it create an email list as well as a mailing list.
Okay.
Those are things that we'll be creating.
Okay.
Would you like to be on the creation of the letter and poster group?
Most definitely.
Wonderful.
I can jump in and respond to the social media question real quick. I should have thought to add that to the updates, actually. We finally figured out, you know, I'm on the same page as Leslie. I can't call myself new staff anymore. I've been here for 7 months now. But we finally figured out the access to PCCEP's social media accounts, which is a big win. And we sent out our first tweet as the new staff team yesterday and today. So we are back in action with the Twitter account, and we're gonna start engaging with the Facebook soon. I don't think PCCEP has an Instagram account, so we could look into that. But yeah, I think those will have to remain as staff managed accounts because that is city policy. But I think PCCEP staff is very open to collaborating with members about you know, what the content that you would like to share with the public and how we can best use those channels to serve you and to advance the goals of, you know, our outreach goals and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of an exciting development. You know, definitely a really good way to get the word out about this stuff.
Nathan. would you like to go next? Or would you like to work on a committee in regards to writing a letter, outreach material, and or the organizational list?
Yeah, I'm happy to contribute to both. I did put some organizations in the list for, or I found an Excel spreadsheet, so I updated that offline. And then the other thing I'll just point out, I'm really glad to hear we're going to be on social media. That's going to be key. I might suggest to staff, I don't know if it's possible to set up new accounts, but I think it would be good to have presence on Mastodon as well as probably TikTok, since that's where the kids these days like to be.
Okay. Noted.
Hey, Tia,
Byron.
would Indeed be going too far with this? Am I going too far, like using Indeed as a platform to put PCCEP on there? Or is that doing too much?
Indeed.
Indeed is primary for finding employment.
Do you mean LinkedIn, Byron?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be a better choice.
Okay, LinkedIn then. Thank you. Thank you, Celeste.
I like LinkedIn.
I think these are all good options. I think one thing that we have to be, especially if it's staff managed, would this be something that the communications person that is going to be hired kind of works on primarily? Because all of these platforms are great, but if you spread yourself too thin, you're not doing anything effectively. So I think there's been a lot put on the table of different platforms, focusing on one or two where we know we can reach the most people and using them effectively, I think is going to be key. Because you also have to like tailor it for each audience, right? Like Facebook, you have to take a look at what that audience is. For TikTok, you have to take a look at what kind of content they consume there. There's like different, so you can't really be using the same message and just like spreading it. That's not usually as effective. So I wanted to make sure to bring that up.
Right.
I think, we will, since this is so early on right now, I think the takeaways for now are we are just beginning to get there as staff, and so we want to work with you all, even particularly on the subcommittee, to hear what you want reflected on these channels. And so figuring out some way to create a system where we can collaborate on that is a good kind of item for future focus, I think. And I'm really excited to hear all of the interest in participating in that.
So wrapping that up, our outreach efforts will be a mailing list and email lists and social media, and pulling teams together to get going, starting via email on drafting a proposed introduction letter to the community, and for us all to take a final look at the organizational list pretty soon, and have you all add your contacts with what you all have, and so everyone can see it. It'll be a work in progress probably throughout the whole year. Leslie, yes.
May I suggest an idea for how we might be able to start using Facebook in a way that is like super easy? For our PCCEP page, I know that we post the meetings on our PCCEP website and the public website, but you can also create Facebook events, and making sure that they all link to the registration page and all of that we need, I think would be a great way to just start kicking that back up. And we have enough events coming up and out there that it would be a good, just initial easy thing. The content's already written and there, so.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yes, I'm looking at our Facebook page. It's still up. So we just can keep using it.
Yeah, PCCEP actually has a decent following on some of these channels, so it'll be exciting to get back into this and hopefully engaging more people, of course.
Yes,
I see Barb's hand.
thank you. Barb?
Hey, y'all. It sounds like you have plenty of people to be on to do your the two things you were looking for. So I couldn't tell if you were interested in community participating, but I want to give you guys a heads up that some of the times that PCCEP has had the Zoom bombing has been when there's been a lot of announcements like Facebook and things like that. So I'm just hoping that you guys have a plan to deal with that. And that's it. I'm not asking if you do. I'm just bringing it up.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think we go back to that slide. I think I'm hearing that we have addressed these items and then some. Tia, what do you think?
Yes, I have all of my notes written. Thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else have comments on working on this slide? Comments on any of the kind of ongoing work or the social media for the subcommittee? Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
This might not be super related, but I was curious about the progress on hiring that community engagement person.
Yes, so hiring and requisitioning and all of that stuff at the city is always a work in progress. So I know about as much as you do right now. Unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, it's been such a struggle.
So right now, Dory, you're our contact for social media.
Yes, and our project assistant Emily is also providing support on that issue. Yeah, she is doing a lot of great work.
Okay.
Okay, speaking of which, I think we are having a little trouble with the screen sharing. So just a second here while I take that over. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Any progress? Sorry, everyone.
Were we just introducing that Nathan was the RFP representative?
This is a good time to
Did you want to say
Yes.
anything?
Celeste actually wanted to provide an update on something related to that in a way. So Celeste, you can go ahead and do that while we figure this out.
Okay, I'll be an excellent space filler here. It's kind of old news, so anybody who might have already been privy to this, forgive me. But our last steering committee meeting was pretty full, and this kind of like dropped off. But I did represent PCCEP on the hiring committee for the civilian training dean. And about a week and a half ago or so, it might have been a little more, I had a conversation with Stephanie Howard. And at that point, they had narrowed it down to 5 people who were going for interviews. And that's pretty much all I can share due to confidentiality and non-disclosure, but it is moving ahead. And that's the thing that I think most people are concerned about. We saw some strong applicants, and I have hopes that we'll get a good cadre of folks in for interviews, and we'll be hearing something possibly by the full committee meeting. So I'll let you know if something new comes down the pike. And thank you all for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Tia, and I think with support from Celeste, I will hand it over to you all to introduce our work session this evening.
Well, I'll help Tia out by just kind of starting. I don't remember if it was the racial equity or the full committee meeting, and my apologies, but I brought up concerns about gunshot detection in the Portland area in our communities. And one of the things that was really important for us to recognize from the community was that it was not necessarily the narrow concern of which company would we prefer to have. In other words, would it be an open application process? But the concern was more about having any form of surveillance in the community, and wondering if that was an ideal way to curb gunshot and gun violence. So we had a presentation that spoke basically about what the types of gunshot detection technology was out there, how it's used. We had some pros and cons of the technology, and then we asked the public, did they want, and sorry, my voice may lose, did the public want to have a forum discussing, number one, did you want gunshot detection technology in the community? And if so, what kind of concerns did you have about it? How did you want to see this implemented? And then two, did you have any concerns about the request for proposals process? The second one, request for proposals process, the writing of the request for proposal has already happened. We do have a PCCEP member. Nathan is our PCCEP representative on the RFP, request for proposal process, and will be giving us updates. So now that leaves us with the first task, which is, how do we want to structure a conversation or a forum or whatever venue for the community to give input about surveillance in the community, and especially narrowing that surveillance down to gunshot detection technology. Did that pretty much sum it up, Dorian and Tia, for our intro? Was there anything I left out?
No, that was discussed on the January 18th PCCEP full board meeting.
Thank you, Tia.
You're right, yes. Thank you. That is how we came to this on our agenda tonight, Celeste. And with community engagement, wanting to start to put together a community event, as so many people that during that meeting felt very strongly about being heard and being able to communicate, their feelings towards gun detection technology, in particular spot shatter. So yes, and we talked about coming back today to asking PCCEP members if they support putting together a community engagement event, to gather input from the community to share with the city the city does have plans moving forward, so we want to try to do that in a timely manner. Joy, is it okay if I talk about those dates or?
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. So this is from the RFP that is live on the City of Portland website. Looks like Nathan has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out there's an error on the RFP and there's an addendum on the website. It's February 8th, not January 8th, I'm pretty sure.
That definitely makes more sense. We noticed that, and I didn't see the addendum, so thanks for pointing that out. So yeah, what we've highlighted here is the week of March 13th would be when the council action on that pilot would be moving forward. So PCCEP, we just wanted to present this information in light of PCCEP's discussion on the details of the community engagement event. And Tia, I'll let you take it.
Okay. Looking to gather information from the community to relate to the city in some format, whether we write the city a letter of our findings or attend the city council meeting is yet to be determined. But tonight we'd like to discuss on with the members and community here, if you'd like to see us put together something, the community engagement team putting together an event, whether it's a town hall, a listening session, some sort of public forum. There's a list of different kinds of activities we can do to hear the community. So those are some ideas, but we wanted to hear from you what you all as members and community members would like to see happen, to hear what the community thinks about this. Leslie.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, just kind of thinking about that. I'm trying to, in my head, create a work back schedule of like when we would need to submit comment, like dissect the information that we collect and then submit it, just to make sure that whatever we do is selected with the thought process that we want to get as many community voices. I think the answer is yes. We definitely want to do something and get some community input. I think my suggestion for the tactic that we select would be to look at a work back schedule and see when we need to have the information done, dissected and collected and digested and put together to submit, so that we can conduct an event that gets us as much feedback as possible within that time frame. Another thing to think about as well is, typically people aren't going to be attending something within like a week or something like that. So also giving us enough time to promote the event to get as many people as possible to whatever we decide to do is another consideration that I would just bring up as we discuss the tactic.
Yes. Having enough time to disseminate the information, how to get involved, where to get involved, all the details.
For sure. So, yeah, I think that's going to be important before, as we decide what type of event to have. I think this will be a lot easier too once we do build those relationships with community organizations and things like that, because we'll be able to activate a lot faster. But this being our first we're still kind of warming up those relationships. I think this one's going to take just a tad more work than hopefully in the future.
Thank you. I see there's a couple more hands. Are we going to go ahead and turn this into the work session now and get going?
Yeah, I think that's what we're doing.
Okay, it sounds like that's naturally happening.
Mhm.
So yes, okay, Nathan, let me just finish up Leslie's notes real quick. But I think that's coming. So, okay, I have what Leslie says. Nathan.
Yeah, I just have a few thoughts on this. I think, with regards to the timeline, I don't know what the RFP reviewal timeline is, but it would be helpful to have, if we're going to have community input, it would be helpful to have that going into the scoring process. I realize that maybe, the timeline might not work for that. In terms of the event, I think, long term, it might be more effective to have, community groups do the engagement with their communities and then report back. In the short term, it sounds like we don't have the relationship set up to do that, which I think, is fine. I also wonder, not everyone can show up to any sort of community engagement event. And I wonder if, again, there's probably a timeline issue, but in the future, I think it would be helpful to do, mail or phone surveys or polls and get feedback that way. Because there's going to be, there's a whole universe of people who are never going to show up to a PCCEP meeting. And their voices matter too.
Okay. So are you suggesting that so I'm feeling like I heard what you said, Nathan, but are you suggesting that we don't have enough organizations to invite quite yet, or you don't think they'll come? You want to do?
Oh, no, I should clarify. I'm supportive of, having an event. I think, in the future, it would be ideal to look at some other strategies. And I guess, I just want to ask PCCEP staff, because I know we've talked in the past about doing things like surveys.
Okay.
Is that something we would be prepared to do if it was something we wanted to do?
I think it depends on what you mean by prepared. There are a lot of different ways of doing surveys and different degrees of what's the word? Not professionalism, but I guess that's what I mean. Like, you could contract a vendor to develop a survey that is, and PCCEP has actually done that in the past. And so, that's a different question. And I do believe that is something that we could support, but that's a different question and a different timeline than could PCCEP members write a survey and work on distributing that to, a certain number of community organizations or neighborhood associations or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think the question is generally yes, but it varies depending on what the goals would be, what the kind of survey, what form the survey would take, all of that. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. I was trying to hear like Nathan and taking notes at the same time, and I think I missed that. So Nathan, can I clarify, and Dory, that you're not sure how many people will actually attend a town hall meeting, and wondering if we have other avenues and strategies like a survey to send out to gather information in addition to an event.
I also do want to add to that point. I know for the Cocal Town Hall back in January of 2022 on body-worn cameras, they actually developed a survey that was sent out in tandem with that town hall, which both of those informed the report. So you can think about it as like a, multi-pronged strategy. Or, a lot of times people come to town halls just to listen, or listening sessions just to listen, and they don't end up talking. And so sending a survey out to everyone who attends an event can also be a good strategy to capture more input. If not everyone has a chance to speak or doesn't feel comfortable engaging in like a spoken form, you know, so there are a lot of ways to approach it. But I agree with Nathan that town halls and the like are just one way to, they're one input for community engagement, but certainly an important one. Celeste?
Yes, I was trying to respond to Corinne, so I'm going to say this out loud first and then get to my statement. Yes, neighborhood associations would be a good group to engage, but I think we'd have to ask what kind of support or and what kind of venue are they looking for? If they could lead a discussion and come up with a decision themselves and submit that to us, that would be probably the best and more preferable way because when it comes to boots on the ground, in many ways, we are PCCEP members are the ones that might have to do the work because we don't have a lot of staff. If you're wanting someone to lead it from the group, that might be a different dynamic, and we'd have to try to figure out if that's even possible. But for right now, that's a possibility. It's like, let's work and see what that would take, or take a look and find out what that would mean. But I had my hand up because I wanted to respond to a couple of things. One of the reasons why we try not to really have a real jam-packed year-long agenda is because we want to remain flexible to situations that arise so that we do have staff and resources to do these outreach venues like we want to do them and with the quality we want to do them. And there's some challenges because when it comes to actual hands on deck, PCCEP members, we are sometimes those hands on deck. So when we're talking about doing some of this stuff, we need to think about what is our capacity to actually do some of this work ourselves. That's why we got nominated and selected, because we brought the skill set. So as we're planning this, be okay with the fact that we're not ever going to get 100% saturation, 100% coverage, or 100% word out to folks. But be happy and be satisfied that we are increasing the amount of people who are aware of the situation and participating. So I'm listening to this and I love all the ideas, but you got to remember, we don't have a staff that necessarily is tasked to do some of the things we're envisioning. So, and I say that not to the public, not public, so you think we're saying, nope, we're not going to work that hard. I'm just saying it's okay for us to scale back and do this a little smaller. I know that a lot of people are concerned with what type of event we should have and when, and what else we need. The sooner the better. But that means then that we may have to limit ourselves to certain venues, like it might have to be an online meeting, or it might be one daytime meeting and one nighttime meeting, So as we're looking at that, we want to figure out, okay, if we're going to have like a town hall where people come and either share their opinion or give us some marching orders, we want to try to come up with that at least tonight so that we can go ahead and schedule it. So I want to kind of bring us back and look at what type of event we want to have, and not worry that we're not going to hit all of the people who absolutely should be heard or are the prime audience for this. Okay, because we probably need to be having this meeting, what, Dory, no later than 3 weeks from now?
Yeah, I think I think there are pretty much 2 weeks we would be looking at, maybe the week of the 20th, but more likely the week of the 20, really the week of the 27th is probably the sweet spot.
Okay. And
Maybe the beginning of the week of the 6th, based on that timeline. That's
okay. So that's going to limit what type of venue we can have. So let's think of that. And then the other thing, there's kind of like two questions on the floor. Do we want surveillance? And if we are going to do this, how is that going to impact the city's decision? Because it could turn out that the majority rather of the people we engage don't want it. But if the city if Portland safety folks, public safety people are fixed on the idea that this is the solution for decreasing gun violence, what impact would us not wanting this technology in the neighborhoods have on that decision? And so that's something really critical we need to think about as well.
I see there's people in line, but Celeste, really quick, I just feel like even if it doesn't make an impact, I feel like it's our duty still to share our voices.
Oh, I agree. I just want us to be aware,
Yeah.
In other words, in plain talk, not get our feelings hurt, but find a new way to get that voice out there.
Yes. Okay, that sounds really good. Should we go through the hands here? I don't know the order because I'm listening, talking, reading.
Yeah, something I learned about Zoom is that the hands actually sort themselves for you. So the one at the top is the order. So I believe it's Barb.
Okay, Barb.
Hey, y'all, thank you for letting me talk here. The things I'm thinking about are what the purpose is for you to have the community event. And if you're trying to do it so that you can get input for a recommendation, then the timeline needs to be a lot sooner and tighter, because looking at the calendar, the other slide, it looks like by the 27th, a decision's going to have been made. So are you trying to intervene at the level of the city council meeting that's going to happen after that? That's one of my set of thoughts. And the other thing is, or are you just trying to educate the public on what's going on? And again, the sooner the better. I think we've also figured out a lot of times if there is a PCCEP meeting already planned, it's a lot easier to use that time than to bring it to have, a completely separate event, especially when it's short notice.
Barb, can I respond to
Yeah,
that?
I just realized the microphone wasn't on. I said a lot too. I think you guys need to not worry.
We heard most of it, Barb.
Oh, okay, thanks. Never mind then, bye.
Okay. Barb, we're responding to the full board meeting where so many people from the community was like, wait a minute, we haven't shared our voice. Can this be a place where we can talk about what we're thinking and feeling about spot shatter and gunshot detection technology? I don't think we're trying to persuade one way or the other. We're just trying to bring people's voices to light.
Yeah, I think Celeste touched on this with kind of the opening comments for this section. And Tia is absolutely right. I think what was expressed in that, I think 118 or 119 PCCEP full committee meeting was also in the context a little bit of the way that the city engaged other community boards on this subject in the past. And so PCCEP discussed seeing themselves as providing a forum for the community to provide input on whether or not they see this technology being a good fit for Portland. That being kind of the overall question about the community engagement event PCCEP is interested in hosting. I think this timeline here, the question really is about which vendor the city plans to move forward with. And PCCEP is identifying that the city hasn't provided a venue for the community to engage with the question of if they support the idea or not at all yet. Does that provide more context? That's what I've heard said.
Yes, as well as doing a separate type of meeting, rather than being kind of like an accessory to what the city is doing in terms of public outreach for this. We're doing our own outreach as it's part of, as it's relevant to the settlement agreement. And so I think, you know, our task gives us a little leeway to look at it from, to give it kind of like a meta view, you know, because as we've seen some of the meetings presented, they present you with, we want gunshot detection technology. Here are the choices and the points of discussion. And we want to change the framing of the discussion to say, is this in the best interest for our community as we craft a shared vision of what community and public safety looks like? Maybe gunshot detection technology is not the answer.
Does that help answer kind of the questions that have been asked about purpose of like the way that this event might be framed a little differently, or the question at hand? Because there are a lot of different ways to, I think, engage and approach.
Yes. Should we move down to Byron? Vaughn? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
you can see it. I was thinking on the engaging part and kind of going off of Celeste of all hands on deck. And this was just an idea I was thinking of. If each month there's a celebration of each heritage that's here in Portland, Oregon. And it's usually a fun event. You know, they got food and festives and music and everything. And if one of us would take one each month and have flyers, and I think being the face of people actually explaining our situation outside of just mail and social media, because there's really nobody there to explain things, or, you know, maybe to draw them to really get their attention. So I would, you know, just an idea of thinking, you know, each month there's a cultural festivity going on, go down there 2 or 4 hours, whatever. One of us could, you know, go down to each one of those festivities and get into people's faces and pass out flyers to people who we think would be interested in something of this nature.
I love that. That's really personal connection. I'm going to put that in the outreach listing that we have besides the town halls, listening sessions, putting up flyers and outreach, going to these kind of activities and just meeting people. I'll be in touch with you, Byron, about that.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a really great idea. Going to each celebration. Okay, got it. Leslie, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I did have a couple of questions. And I think they've kind of been raised, but I don't feel like I've gotten a clear answer quite yet. In terms of what lever we're trying to press with this meeting, and like what lever we're trying to pull to impact change, I think from the comments, I just want to clarify, it sounds like what we're really looking to do is pass along information. We don't think that we're essentially going to be able to impact it. It's just more passing along the community feedback. Is that correct?
I think so. And
And
then
that, okay, go ahead.
I'm hoping that if they really take the community's input to heart, maybe things will change.
Right. Can we put up the calendar again, please? Because if in that case, like if all we're looking to do is collect community feedback and not necessarily impact or because we don't think we can impact anything, then that.
I don't know if that's ever
Yeah.
the way we want to approach our work.
Yeah.
I would not necessarily agree with that statement. And what I would say is the reason that this is laid out
Mhm.
as such is to kind of highlight, what the city's timeline on this action.
Yeah.
There, PCCEP it is intended to be a forum for community input on issues that are implicated under the settlement agreement. PCCEP members seem to have identified this as one of them. So, I wouldn't say that is I think any work that PCCEP is doing, I don't think the goal would be, we're doing this work and we're not going to have any impact. That would not be the hope. But yeah. So
Yeah. That makes sense to me. At that kind of with that in mind, at which point of this process can we either have the most impact so that we can, figure that out? I'm also looking at when that like the 27th is, and that is really in less than, it's in less than 2 weeks, really. Or a little bit over 2 weeks, I guess. But taking a look at that, we'd have to get so is having the event on the 27th or like the week of the 27th, is that going to be good enough to for us to collect and like get information out back to the city about this technology? Like, does that make sense, or does it make sense to have a little maybe work with what we have? One of the thoughts, and I think it was actually brought up by something that Nathan said, was so the public presentation. I'm thinking there is a large component of education that probably needs to happen to new community members. I think the community members that we heard from that wanted to provide feedback are already familiar with this technology. But if we're trying to broaden and get more feedback, I think there's some people that don't even know that the city's doing this. So there's an educational component that I think also needs to happen, that I don't know that we're necessarily ready for when it comes to like the structure of what the meeting is going to be. But what Nathan said about like surveys got me thinking, what if we try to push as many people as possible to attend or expose them to the public presentation? I'm not sure of what that content is all going to be, but I'm assuming that there's going to be some sort of educational component at some point, probably at the beginning, about why this technology is necessary, or like why the city's looking into that. And we almost have the city doing the work for us of like educating the public, try to get as many people to attend that meeting as possible. And then maybe after that meeting, now that people have attended, those people that attended get their feedback from having attended and being presented with this, and kind of maybe even create our event around that. Is a thought I had. And then that gives us a little bit more time to maybe develop a survey, think about the questions we want to ask, and get more feedback than just kind of like a cold reach out.
Are you talking about, I just wrote you a note. Are you talking about them attending the city's public presentation?
Yes.
Okay. And since we're all community members, we can all go to that if we could or wanted to.
Yeah, that's my understanding. So like the city's gonna present, and I'm sure, getting as many people to kind of attend that, I think, why would that be effective, or like an effective starting point?
The public presentation, my understanding of what that is a public presentation of the candidates or options, I guess, for the who have submitted an RFP.
As I totally understand that, but as a part of that, I'm assuming that there's going to be some educational component, right? Like if it's if it's for the presentation, like the public, there is going to be some sort of like explanation as to like what this gunshot detection is and like why the city thinks we
There
need it
may
and all
or
of that.
may not be at this level. I mean, this is not the first time. Remember, this is a remake of that RFP process. So it's been in the papers, it's been on the news for a while. There may not be the level of explanation that I think you're trying to get to. So, but let me be quiet because Leslie's got her hand up and I have both an answer to that and I have an example of how we can kind of take some of what I'm hearing is some background anxiety out of how we can do this. But let me just cede the floor.
Leslie's the one who's been talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. It didn't show that on mine for some odd reason. I thought that was Ashley. Okay. Oh, and that's not here. Okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
Go for it, Celeste.
Okay. So I don't think we should expect there's going to be that level of education. But I'm not thinking we don't necessarily have to handle that. When there was the discovery of the really offensive PowerPoint slides in the training deck, we put together a very fast response on the Racial Equity Subcommittee. I held 2 or 3 meetings. We copied down people's thoughts in a raw form. Claudia and Judith and Theo and I went through that. We condensed them along kind of like subtopic headings. And then we put together a statement and we brought it to folks. I'm sensing what sounds like, I'm interpreting it to be a matter of anxiety. Like we want to do this right. And we want to make sure we get as many people as we can. You're never going to get the optimum audience. So if we just advertise that we're doing this, then we have people share. Do you want this technology or whatever we distill the 2 questions down to? We ask people the questions. They submit their answers both by giving us some verbal feedback, sending email feedback, maybe in the chat. We collate and distill that. We can do a meeting. It's not going to be perfect because we're not going to always have enough time to respond. I'm not afraid of getting a decent outreach in that short amount of time. So don't let that desire to serve at optimum paralyze you. We can have a meeting and just respond that quickly and get it to the city. If we worry about it being perfect, we'll be here this time next year. Don't be afraid that it's going to be fast and not polished. I think us being flexible and collecting a critical mass of the community's heartfelt concerns is an honorable effort in itself. And I think we can do that.
I completely agree. My concern is, it is definitely, towards that, but I think this is a little different than the PowerPoint presentation. I think most people understand what a PowerPoint presentation is and all of that. Some people might not completely
Yeah.
understand this
No,
technology.
this was
and, like-
different. This was about the content of the slides, not how to do it.
Right. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like,
Uh-huh.
somebody, puts up a slide. Most people have like actually seen that. They kind of know like that seems to be a little bit more digestible than like this type of technology where it's a little bit more like, what is that even? Like, if you haven't been exposed to it, like, I think there's a little bit more of an education component and my suggestion was really only to like try to drive people to the public presentation to try to get as much background.
We should do that. Yes, I think we should do that.
To get as much background on that technology and what the city's proposing, so that people are well informed and can provide their opinions.
We do need to take a break. We're a bit past time there, but let's pick up on that because PCCEP could suggest both of those things. But yeah, let's put a pin in that because we are about 10 minutes past our break time. Sorry for interrupting. And let's meet back here at 7:18.
Recording stopped.
And welcome, Ashley. Thank you for being here. I hope you had a great night with your family.
We did. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I know we left sort of abruptly there, so thank you for hanging with us. Should we just jump back in where I think Leslie and Celeste were having a discussion? I see Celeste's hand.
Yeah, I put my hand up just so I could remember. So here's what I was trying to say. The city is going to have a vote. It's going to happen soon. I think they're going to vote within about a week, so or sooner. So here, look, come on, brain. The city is going to vote whether or not to move forward with the pilot program. Okay, we need to have a meeting before then to get the input. So, and that's the thing, that's the timeline. That's why I'm saying it's okay that it's not as neat and pretty as you would want it to be to, reflect your commitment to the work. We just need to be able to move quickly, have a meeting, gather the input from folks. Is this a good move for the city? Do we want gunshot detection technology at all? And do we want the city to move ahead? And that's all we have to worry about. And then we just take that rough data. We don't need to analyze it or polish it and submit it to the city. So that's why I'm saying it's okay if we just have a town hall meeting similar to the type we had for the offensive slides, and we gather input and then we turn it over to the city. There will be time when we can have a more polished approach, but we've got a short timeline, and they're going to be voting on February 17th, I believe. So we really need to have this meeting ASAP, and it doesn't have to be pretty.
So Celeste, to what you're saying, this timeline, that meeting that you're talking about, that I think that's what we were trying to identify earlier in the meeting of like, when do we need to meet? Because like, when can we make an impact? And it sounds like until you just said that right now of the voting, that hadn't been brought up.
It had, but it probably just wasn't clear. Yeah. Okay, so
I think I hear you. I hear you, Leslie. I think the pending council approval thing is easy to miss there. But yeah, I think that's what that means.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think a lot of people were asking earlier. Like, when do we need to provide the feedback to the city, or and I don't think until Celeste said that right now, I don't think that was clear that would be the optimum time for us to provide the feedback. Having said that, yeah, we can definitely do something quicker, and it does have to be quicker. I think my point is not necessarily that it needed to be perfect, is that it needed to be effective. And like, what are we needing? Like, what is that structure going to look like? And there is that feedback of like, okay, do we want shot detection on its face? Why wouldn't a lot of people think that that's a good idea, right? So there has to be a small educational component. It's different than racist content on slides that is just evidently on its face terrible. I like what Tia said about putting together a piece with the lieutenant, to explain what that technology does, why, like, there's that discussion, and it could be part of that meeting that you're talking about, Celeste, that needs to happen so that but people need to be informed so that they can form an opinion. On its face, I think a lot of people would think, hey, that's actually not a bad idea. That's actually really cool. We are having a lot of gun violence. So like, understanding the nuances, I think, are important for this type of thing.
Well, we could use the presentation material. We might need to augment it a bit, but use the same presentation material that I used when I broached the subject initially last month. The problem is that the way it's being presented to the public, it's given them a false dichotomy, a false choice. We need to do something. This is the solution. And and that's kind of like posing it as this is the only choice there is. This is not the only choice. And then it does not really discuss the fact that there are no real effective gunshot detection technologies out there on the market. So that's the other thing. So I could do that, but it has to be as value neutral as possible. And right now, I'm not seeing anything coming out of the police that's value neutral. I'm seeing something, we want gunshot technology as the answer to increase gun violence. And that's not the optimum framing for the community to have ideas of how to understand this. So we can use what was done before, because between Dory and I, we made that as value neutral as we could. And everybody can look at, I see what you're doing. We're framing your opening comment. And I think that material we use would be a good way to frame it.
Well, I think notably, it's noted here that it says if any. So there are many ways to approach this, right? PCCEP can choose to frame this in a certain direction or not at all, or to, provide different perspectives. There are lots of different ways to approach it, which is why this question is here.
So what are the last 2 dates we can have this and have at least one day to work on it and send it to council? Because we need to at least get a date. I think we're still trying to figure out the type of event, but at least the date.
Yeah, and that's, I think, why at the very beginning I asked when we want to have the comment in, so that we can create a work back schedule from that,
right,
and identify that.
Right. And then Dory had a calendar up there, but
Hey, Celeste,
yes.
can we use tonight's comments as part of this? So we don't have to worry about another meeting or?
No, we haven't really. I mean, all people have kind of done is had circular discussions about how to have a forum. We have not really gathered any comments.
I think that's how we figure this out. Can we go to Ashley? And Ashley is back, so Ashley can take over her chairing duties. It should be noted, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Dory, and thanks, Tia. So I guess I'm just trying to dive into where the discussion is now, and I guess thinking of dates. And I wanted to check in, because maybe this has been discussed already, about using the week of the 20th. So I guess the Racial Equity Subcommittee is going to have a meeting that Wednesday. And would that be an option for the town hall, or are we still talking about another date outside the Wednesday timeframe? So then to answer, and so to follow up on that, I wanted to just suggest, based on the RFP timeline, that if we could get the town hall in that week or before then, which I know it doesn't leave us a ton of time, then in fact we actually do take as much input as we can and get it, I would say get it in before the selection committee recommendation, because at what point is that, it feels like this is like to what Celeste was saying, I was hoping that we figure out a way to get input, because it feels like this is already going forward, and it's unclear unclear what kind of community input we're going to get, and so that's that's why I wanted to bring this up for sure, to make sure that we're plugging into these important dates. And I'm wondering if before the selection committee recommendation even would make sense, so that whatever we hear, that can be added in. And I don't know if Nathan has any thoughts on that, if that whole selection committee has started and started to meet. So I asked a lot of questions there. But Dory, what do you think? They're mostly to you.
I think that timeline might be that would be 2 weeks from now. I think that might just be too tight. But if the objective would be to have an event prior to council votes on whether or not to move forward with the pilot, I think the week of February 27th would work. I just think, 2 weeks might really be a real challenge, both for the committee to plan and also to engage the community with sufficient notice. Those are my initial reactions.
I'm still trying to collect all my thoughts here because I know you guys have already been talking. So do we want to pick? I mean, can we take over? Yeah, can we take over the March 1st? I mean, I don't want to take time from other subcommittees. Is there a collective yes from the subcommittee members, which is most of the PCCEP, to maybe prioritize this and repurpose?
Or we could just set a meeting. Because when I did the extra meetings for the slide, I just established meetings that were outside of the regular schedule.
Okay, yeah.
What I would suggest, because I think Barb earlier made a good point, that the established Wednesday meeting times work well for both members and just as the PCCEP time. And if 3/1 seemed like a good date, March 1st, the community engagement subcommittee could pretty easily just swap out with settlement and policy the following week.
Okay, that's good to know. Because in that March 1st, we have a little more time to plan, to get the notice out. And I think part of what T and I have talked about is how do we get information out, to those partner groups? How do we start making those connections? So that feels.
What about the type of event? I think we've been saying town hall a lot. Is that kind of where what people are feeling? Town hall, listening session.
Mm-hmm. Well, what were you guys talking about in terms of educational pieces? Like a presentation? Has there been any discussion about that?
Yeah,
I requested it.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that seems like a good place to start, because I think that's the gap we're trying to fill, is making sure that at least in our capacity, the community engagement, getting the word out, letting them know what this technology is and what's happening. And I think, I was under the assumption we all assumed that we needed, that was really needed because of sort of the action that were taken last year to vote on the technology and, kind of the secrecy around that. So I see you circling the framing, and
I think, I think I'm wondering, is that a town hall with framing from PCCEP about, like, with some of those, I think you could say educational is that what I'm hearing, or is this a different type of educational event?
Sorry, say that again. What are you differentiating that are educational?
Well, an educational event, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think that could take many forms itself. But there could also be town halls or listening sessions where the intention overall is to solicit community input, but that can have framing that educates or frames the content in a certain way. So provides like background information, which educates, but the entire purpose of the event isn't to educate, it's to hear community input.
Mhm.
Whereas an educational event, I would say the purpose overall would not be to hear community input, it would be to get the word out rather than getting the feedback in, right?
So is this a place where the city can then help us come and present where they are? I know we talked about that the last full meeting of having somebody from the city there to be able to just kind of tell us what happened, be able to ask questions. Yeah, to get that framing, like where are we today and how did we get here? Because, you know, just that to recognize that there are things rolling and we want to just I think frame it in this in the sense that we want the public to know that this is happening, this is going on. Do you have any input? Is there anything we can share in our capacity about this? What's going on?
I would say those are probably questions for you to answer as a
Yeah.
group.
Mhm.
If that's what you would want for the framing for the city, a representative from the mayor's office or something like that to provide that information, or if you all want to provide it, or if you want to request anyone else. I think those are all decisions that you all would need to make around it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So Leslie, you have your hand up. Do you want to, did you put down?
Yeah, I put my hand down instead of unmuting. So
Okay.
my kind of, so like, I completely agree. I think making it value neutral shouldn't necessarily, it should land on us to provide that forum and that platform. So I think having somebody from the city, but also having somebody like from a community organization that, you know, has some perspective into like why, because the city is going to advocate for it, presumably. There could also be somebody like a dissenting voice from a community organization of like why a subject matter expert potentially as to like why, you know, they don't, and then they don't maybe think this is the right call or something like that. And then the community themselves can decide. We're just presenting the information. A portion of that could be Q&A. I like the fact that it's recorded because that could be made available to the public after the fact. And we can also use it to, promote and like, hey, anybody that didn't attend, here's this, please provide feedback and comment using this form or something like that based for this meeting that happened or something like that. And we can even, there's meeting notes, there's summaries, there's other ways that people can provide their input even after the fact.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's an easy to do. There's just something in the notes about, in the chats about Celeste's presentation. I think I missed that part and I was just curious because, if there's something that maybe PCCEP members can present, maybe that's another angle versus
I think people are referencing the slides from the 118 meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't talk about it today, just those ones. And yeah, PCCEP could definitely recycle those.
Right. That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Because, I think we do want to sort of, just kind of do separate from what the city's doing, essentially, And well, Dory, do you know what the city's doing for their public presentation piece? Like, what's that look like?
We haven't gotten word on that, but my understanding is that is a forum for the community to hear about like the different vendors who have bid, right? So that's what that piece is. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, because originally I had mentioned that as like maybe we want to funnel the community there to like understand, but it doesn't sound like that is likely. So it sounds like we would have to create our own kind of informative educational event. Celeste brought up that like that's not likely to happen. Like an educational component at that meeting is not likely to happen, unfortunately. Otherwise, it would have been great because then we just bring people to that. But yeah.
I mean, we could still promote it and still.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we talked a lot about that.
Get the both sides. Yeah.
I think Barb's comment is accurate in the chat. The two top vendors explain to community what they are all about. I think is what Stephanie said. Or that's what Barb put in the chat is that Stephanie said that.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know. That makes sense. Okay. Okay. What time is it? Well, do we want to, are there some things we can confirm today? Like, can we confirm the date? Can we confirm that we want to have, an education piece, so that we can have a robust Q&A? Maybe that's the framing is, and I'm kind of, leaning towards the presentation that we had on the 18th, on January 18th. I think that gave some clarity of at least what, where we are now, like what happened and where we are now. And I don't know, I know Leslie said something about like an expert kind of somebody from, an outside expert or maybe an organization that's more, more impacted. So that will take a little bit of work, I think, but we could, try to go down that route and see. And this is all work we can kind of do before outside the meeting space. Yeah, exactly. So for Dory in the chat, a subject matter expert from the community to support a neutral space. Yeah.
So is Kenneth Dilio not a neutral partner since he's a lieutenant?
Police are not neutral partners in this. This is not to disparage them. This is not to say they're wrong. They want shot detection technology.
And they have had a lot of space to present, give education. And I think the point of our town hall, of our meeting is to add or just, provide a different space that's neutral, right? That's neutral enough that you can get input.
I think perhaps, we certainly could invite
You invite them,
a city representative, a city representative like from the mayor's office or something like that, as a slightly more neutral presenter to also participate in our overall framing, so we have perspectives from a variety of from the city, from the community, from PCCEP, to kind of round it out a little bit. So it's not a bad thought, or I think it's a good thought. I think that supports a neutral kind of framing, and I think that's what I'm hearing is overall what PCCEP is going for.
Yeah. A neutral space. Yeah, I like that. Who from the city would that be? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
So my question, okay. This is a difficult thing to say without sounding like I'm being prejudicial, and I'm not. But why are you assuming that the city is a neutral party? And this is not, I'm not finger pointing or accusing, but I'm trying to open it up and say, maybe they're not necessarily a neutral party because this has been framed with a vote on a pilot program.
Celeste, can I just interject? I think I was unclear.
Okay.
We're getting close on time, so I just want to nip it in the bud. I'm not claiming actually any of these parties are neutral. I don't.
Okay, good. I'm something there. I'm
saying that having a balance of perspectives, that we would expect to be in different directions, supports a more neutral environment.
Oh, okay, that is entirely true. I support that wholeheartedly. Thank you. I missed something. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Dory, for clarifying that, because I think that's an important piece of it, is that we just really want to create another space that's outside of the politics, because we know that about this, that's out there. We don't need to discover that. So I think that'd be important, just to get all the perspectives in the room and then have some Q&A for the public. I think that's, because then we can go from there, right? We can go from there, whatever we need to keep getting more input on, or how to, talk to the city, then we've started there. So yeah, thanks for the inviting the mayor's office. Yeah. Well, do we want to stop. I feel like I know what we're walking away with trying to do. I guess we just got to think of some logistics. And then do we want to open some time up for the public now who are here and have any thoughts on what I'm talking about? Maybe some ideas of how to, what to do what to do at the time that we're going to be asking the community for.
I'm sorry, I know that was an ask, but again, my brain just said, drop the ball. Can you say that again one more time, please?
Oh, no worries. I know my brain, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the charger go down. I was just saying, I was wondering if we wanted to move it over to public comment or open comment. Because I feel like I kind of know what we're moving forward with. There's some logistical stuff we can figure out, work on the agenda and all that. But just curious if there anybody else who wants to, give their thoughts on what we've talked about, the direction we're going, how to make this event successful. Yeah. Maybe raise your hand, get on the list there. Yeah, Barbara. Thank you.
Now that the town hall is going to be after the city votes. So how is that influencing anything?
So they're actually not voting. It sounds like it's going to council the week of March 8th or March. Thank you, Dory. I think you're going to bring up the timeline. So March.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yep. So the week of this 27th is when they're going to, have their selection committee recommendation, and then it goes to, but also if anybody's worked in project management world, RFP, sometimes timelines, votes particularly can get moved around. So, but yeah, aiming before that week.
Yeah. That's really important to note, Ashley. This can definitely be pushed. We have no idea, right? But what we can infer is that sometimes, so the recommendations coming on the 27th, we think, so sometime between then and the week of March 13th is when we would infer that vote would be happening. Of course, timelines get moved all the time, but that is the inference. So that's kind of the sweet spot we're trying to identify in terms of the planning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Barb, how about you?
Hey, y'all. Sorry, I don't know how in tune you guys are with council's schedule, but you can sign up for the auditor's office to send you the next week's schedule every Friday. And I don't know, Dory, if you get more of a heads up from the mayor's office from what they're trying to do with certain things, if that might be helpful to this group. That's all I got to say about it. And I agree, timelines change.
Yeah, I get those emails. Hard to open them up every week. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but yeah, so, I think, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say it's better than not getting them and forgetting to look. That's all.
Yeah. No, I definitely have the best intentions. But yeah, I mean, I think this is just like the first step. And I think getting ahead with the current timeline that we know is the best, because then, if it gets, it gets stretched out, then that gives us an opportunity to get more input and do another town hall. I know we definitely want to, we definitely heard from the community about wanting more maybe in-person meeting space. So I'd love to start, diving into that. I think the hybrid world for these meetings, and this could be a good place, depending on kind of where the timeline does end up going and whatever input we hear, and what we want to keep, what we want to recommend eventually to the city, because we will want to do that. Tia, you have your hand up, sorry.
I know we're going to be putting out the announcement on the PCCEP website, but I think we also wanted to do some recruitment, or recruitment's probably not the right word, but special invitations. Special is probably not the right word either, but to reach out to some of our contacts to really try to get a great conversation going and start connecting with the organizations out there. So I wanted to try to get a few more ideas of contacts that we can reach out to and really request that they can attend. So if anyone else has ideas, I posted some of the people I already had in mind who I've talked to about this already. Wanted to see what other people had in mind.
I'd like us to also focus on not the usual groups, because not all the people we need to reach are necessarily in these groups. So, I mean, I can take on some of that. I got some resources, and I can send out some notices. I guess my weight would be for whatever document we're going to send is ready, so that we're using a what's the word I want? A standardized message, a uniform message.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good point. Yeah.
So,
And maybe that's the background work we can do. You know, I think working on that list is sort of, you know, the ongoing project. And so this is a way for us to start using it and get the contacts, start utilizing it, and then creating that kind of message. So yeah, maybe Tia, you and I can start that and get that going so that we can you know, yeah, again, let's use our networks. Let's use who we know. And like you said, Celeste, who's usually not, you know, directly invited, or who, you know, whose community would have a good stake in this conversation. So I think that's the groundwork we need to be doing the next couple of weeks, in addition to planning the event. But like that, yeah, those two pieces, like the event, I think we've really figured out some logistics, so that's really good. And then we can move forward with inviting those organizations. Yeah.
and did we settle at 6 o'clock as usual? 316.
Yeah. I just feel like that consistency really does matter. Or, you know, yeah, it does. I mean, it's like, you always know where to find us, right? Like, here we are Wednesdays. So that'd be good.
Okay, well,
Okay.
did we hit everything on our list, Tia and Ashley and Dory?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was only here halfway for the conversation, but I feel like we're walking away as far as co-chairs to start leading a couple parts of this. And yeah, I'm excited to, you know, have the event on the 1st, and that way we can, you know, do our due diligence like we promised in the other meeting. And it's exciting. It's exciting, you know, it's exciting being a new member. I know there's been so much work before I started and all that. And but as a new member, it's nice to see kind of pieces come together a little bit. And this feels like that, like just taking what we've heard from other meetings and moving it forward in this way of how do we engage the community. So it's a good job, everybody.
I agree. Yeah, it's very, very heartening. Glad to see all of this progress, and you guys are doing amazing work. And I want to respond to Barb's question in the chat. We provide accommodations like interpretation for all PCCEP meetings, including community engagement events. Currently, we provide American Sign Language and Spanish interpretation by default, and any other languages by request. So for something like a community engagement event where maybe we would have a broader reach, that by request might be a little bit more relevant. So that's something to note. If you all have any engagement avenues where that might come into play, definitely let us know, and know that that is available.
Please include it on the advertising if you're going to have it. Sorry, I know. Sorry about my voice.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, okay. Do we have any other business PCEP members or co-chairs?
No, I was just gonna put one more thing in the chat. I don't know if this got shared, but you know, I think we know what our agenda is going to be for the next month, but you know, we're trying to figure out, you know, thinking about work plans, kind of moving forward, trying to take that advice. I think that'd be really helpful. And obviously moving with the waves of PCEP priorities, but yeah, there's the agenda input form, you know, let us know what we could be talking about more. But yeah. Feeling good.
Okay, so coming up, just as a reminder, wow, next week already we have our full PCEP meeting. In that meeting, we are focused on finishing and voting on that independent monitor recommendation. And then we're also going to be talking about the status conference hearing, which PCEP has agreed to you know, have a presence at all of the upcoming status conference hearings. So that's a big meeting. Looking forward to seeing all of you there. And then of course on February 28th, we have the actual hearing. So a lot coming up. And then just a few days after that, we will have, or actually the day after that, my goodness, we will have our town hall. Busy month for PCEP, doing a lot of really important work. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Oh, sorry. That slide. Okay, yeah. And with that, I think that takes care of all of our business tonight. So, oh, sorry, Barb, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's the same one I've had before. Is the main meeting that's next week going to run 6 to 8:30 or from 6 to 8?
It is 6 to 8:30, and that should be reflected on the website and all of the meeting notice that we send out.
Okay, because the slide before implies that it's not, and I just want people to make sure that they make the time to be there. Sorry.
Sure, thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you all so much for your time tonight and all your great ideas. Thank you, yeah, PCEP members, members of the public, and all of our accessibility support. And yeah, ending early tonight. The time is now 7:55 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Cool.
Recording
Thanks, Dorothy.
stopped.
Thanks, staff. Thanks for all your help.